Thank you, Member. Member for Coquitlam-Millardville.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I too am proud to speak to Bill 27 to include gender identity and gender expression as part of our human rights legislation. And I want to speak to the House wearing three different hats, as an MLA, as a family therapist, and as a mother. So first, as an MLA, I want to extend a heartfelt thanks and gratitude to my colleague, who I'm very proud of, the member from Vancouver West End. He's introduced this legislation 4 times in this House, and it shouldn't take that long, Honorable Speaker. It really shouldn't, because it's always been the right thing, but it's here now before us, and I'm very proud to support him, and I'm very thankful that he has continued tirelessly to bring it back again and again, that he didn't give up, that he knew it was the right thing, and he continued to bring it forward in this House. I'd also like to extend thanks to the BC Liberal Caucus. I am sure it must have been an interesting dialogue. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in their caucus chambers. And I think it was the right thing for them to do, and I am pleased that they have decided to act on my colleague's legislation and bring it to fruition and reality here today. It is unfortunate that there have been some members opposite who have chosen not to engage in the celebratory mood of the House and have chosen actually not to recognize trans people and gender variant people as a special group deserving of some special recognition in the human rights legislation. And if I heard correctly from the member from Chilliwack Hope, it sounded like he felt like the government got bullied by the LGBTQ community, given his comments. And I suspect that actually wasn't the case. I suspect that the government didn't decide to change this legislation because they felt bullied. If anything, I think the Pride Parade and that society took a stand last year. They took a stand last year that said, if you want to enter our parade, if you want to participate, then you need to sign off that you support this legislation that the member from the West End brought forward. And if anything, Honourable Speaker, I think that perhaps influenced the government because they want to be part of the parade. It's a dynamic parade. There's 100,000 people, and it's not cool in an election year to be left out of that parade. So it would make sense. So I don't think it was being bullied at all, Honourable Speaker. I think it was being very thoughtful and mindful of what the temperament is of British Columbians. And I think that's the responsibility of government, and I think it was the right choice. Now, I also think it's important to thank the advocates and the allies. They have worked long and hard to make sure that the member from West End was properly supported. They worked long and hard to talk about the issue, to talk about the impact, to talk about the reality of the lives of people who did not fit what some might consider a stereotypical role, a common role, that this is what gender looks like, this is what woman looks like, this is what man looks like. There are a variety of different ways that people express their genders. And there's a particular group that was not fitting that mold. And recognizing them as a special, unique group, Honourable Speaker, is the right thing to do. So I congratulate my colleague, I congratulate the government, and I congratulate the allies and the advocates who worked long and hard to bring us here today. Now, I'd like to put on my therapist hat, Honourable Speaker. It's a career that I had for 20 years before I stepped into the political world. And I draw on it a lot in this House because I think of all the people that I have served and all the people that I have worked with. I hear their stories and they come in with me when I come into this House because they're British Columbians. They're British Columbians who live their lives as best they can. And sometimes they bump up against things that make life hard. And I have to tell people in this House that when you don't fit the mold, when you don't fit the traditional stereotypes that we all have, life is harder. I've seen young people who were not sure of their gender identity, and they felt like crap. They felt like they didn't belong. They felt like they weren't worthy. They felt like they didn't deserve to be loved. Now, changing this legislation, adding these special identities, this acknowledgement of gender expression, gender identity, isn't going to fix all of that, Honourable Speaker. There's a lot of work to be done to address that. But we do know that those who have a different perspective of their gender, a different experience of their gender identity, and their gender expression. They are a vulnerable group, and they are worthy of special protection. But we have a long way to go. I heard it here in this house, and I am so thrilled that people recognize that it's not enough to just change words in a piece of legislation. We need to act. We need to be bold. We need to find ways in our institutions to make sure that people feel welcome, all people feel welcome. And so as a family therapist, I think it's important to push that, and I encourage the advocates and the allies to continue to push in those places in our institutions where people still feel like they don't belong, where they still feel different. We have to help them be their voice, help them find their voice, and make sure that they feel whole and wanted and valued. So the last role that I want to speak to, Honorable Speaker, is the role that I am most proud of, and the role that, for me, is the most emotional, and that's as a mother. I am the proud mother of a gay man, and the voices of parents have not been, of parents of those with a different either gender or different sexual orientation, I haven't heard here in this house, and I think it's an important voice that we consider. So when my son came out to me when he was 17, it was about a week after he graduated, I wasn't particularly surprised. I was reflecting on the time when I did ask him some questions around, so that time when you came home drunk and you were crying and you were sick and you were saying, you know, that this girl that you said you liked was kissing Mike and you were distraught. Like, what was that about? Was it Mike or was it her? And he said, no, it was her, and he was, you know, and he was heartbroken, and so it was a girl who broke his heart first, but that he was gay, and he was okay with that, and I was okay with that, and it was like, well, of course you are. But I remember my heart breaking for him, not because he was gay, but because the world wasn't ready for him. Now, I'm Jewish, and I raised my kids to be proud of their Jewish identity. And I raised them knowing that there would be people in this world who wouldn't like that they were Jewish. And I felt it was my duty as a parent to give my child the protections that they needed, the tools that they would need when they would go out into the world, and the world wouldn't like them for their identity. And now here was my son, who started a global issues club in his school, who was the class president, who was a leader, popular, loved by teachers, by students, and he felt that he couldn't come out in his school because the world wasn't safe. Now, Honorable Speaker, it wasn't that long ago that he came out. It was 9 years ago. We're not talking ages and ages ago. So as a parent, my heart broke because now he's confirming for me what I suspected, was that he was a gay man. And I thought, there are people in the world who will not be okay with who he is. And that's not okay. That's not okay for me. And it shouldn't be okay for anybody in this house. So now we have another group, a group where it's a little bit different for them. Their physical gender and their experience of gender don't fit. Now, there's a woman in my community who has come to me as a friend because her child is going through that very thing. And this mother is heartbroken because there's no place for her child to take their angst. There's no place for her child to go and feel okay in the world. And so this piece of legislation is a start that says, in British Columbia, you are recognized for who you are. So, Honorable Speaker, as a proud mom, as a family therapist, and most definitely as the MLA for Coquitlam-Millardville, I'm very proud to support this bill. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.